Hey everybody, it's Wednesday, August 19th. Appreciate you coming on and listening to the Wednesday evening lesson. John chapter 11 is where we're going to be diving into today to think about something, but I actually want to begin with the song we've been singing on Sunday mornings, Living by Faith. And I want to ask you a question. I'm going to read the first verse, the one we've been singing every week at the end of service. And I'm going to ask you to think about what is the most important word or the key word to this verse. So let me just read it to you. I'll save you the singing. And just as you listen to the words, listen for which word might be critical or the key word to the whole thought of living by faith. It says, I care not today what the morrow may bring, if shadow or sunshine or rain. The Lord I know ruleth o'er everything, and all of my worry is vain. I know when somebody asks me a question like that, I overthink it. I try to figure out what they're thinking instead of just taking in the verse and thinking about it. So I'm just going to jump to it. I'd be curious if you came up with a word you thought was most important. You know, I care not today. Maybe the words care. It all starts with that. But actually, I guess what I'm answering is when I read this, the key to living by faith, as this songwriter is putting it, is in the second line, the Lord I know ruleth o'er everything, and all of my worry is vain. Is faith is knowing. Interestingly, the word there in the Greek is a word that is often used where we get the term optical, which, you know, we refer to glasses, which refers to vision. It's about seeing. I see it, you know, and I think of those driving tests when you're going to see a flashing red light, just indicate which side it's on when you see it. They're testing your peripheral vision, and my eye doctor will take an ink pen and he'll start way down here and he'll start bringing it and he'll say, let me know when you see it. And you do. You're trying to be honest because you want the right prescription, and you're sitting there and you're literally, you know which side it's coming from, but you want to be honest when you first see it. And so when we use the word know, it literally means to perceive or to see. I see it. So I just want to challenge us with the Lord I know ruleth o'er everything, and all of my worry is vain. Do you know that? Because you're never going to stop worrying until you know that the Lord ruleth o'er everything. So do we know? Do we know? Do we know? And interestingly, we're going to use John 11, which is a familiar text to a lot of folks, because if you've been around church much, it's the story of Mary and Martha and Lazarus. And our key word today is know. So let's just read a little bit. John 11 verse 1 says, Now a certain man was sick named Lazarus of Bethany, a town of Mary and her sister Martha. It was that Mary which anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Interestingly, that hasn't happened yet, which kind of proves John wrote his gospel well after all these events, and it's not a chronological as it happened thing. It's a reflection of what he knows in the whole. So verse 3 says, Therefore his sister sent unto him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom thou lovest is sick. When Jesus heard that, he said, This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified thereby. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. When he had heard, therefore, that he was sick, he abode 2 days still in the same place where he was. Then after that saith he to his disciples, Let us go into Judea again. And there's a little sidebar. And go down to verse 11. You can read those other verses later. It has nothing to do with our lesson. It says, These things said he, and after that he said unto them, Our friend Lazarus sleepeth, but I go, that I may awake him out of sleep. Then said his disciples, Lord, if he sleep, he shall do well. Howbeit Jesus spake of his death, but they thought that he had spoken of taking of rest in sleep. Then said Jesus unto them plainly, Lazarus is dead. And I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, to the intent ye may believe. Nevertheless, let us go unto him. Then said Thomas, which is called Didymus, unto his fellow disciples, Let us also go, that we may die with him, which goes back to verses 8 through 11 that we didn't read. They're worried about dying on the way, which they had legitimate reason. The leaders in Jerusalem were extremely angry at Jesus, and they had tried to kill him, and they were certain, the disciples were certain, if they went back to Jerusalem, it would probably mean their death. So that's where the disciples' mind's at. Jesus is being a little bit confusing. You have to admit that. He says this sickness is not unto death in verse 4, but Lazarus does die. Then he says he's sleeping, and the disciples go, well, if he's sleeping, best thing for sickness is to sleep a little. That's a good thing. Why would you go wake him up if he's sleeping? Sleeping is a healing time. And Jesus said plainly, he's dead. So, you got to admit there's a little bit of a, kind of a wordplay thing. And Jesus waited 2 days, and then John feels like he's got to say in verse 5, and Jesus loved Mary and her sister and Lazarus. And the next verse he said, but he waits 2 days before he leaves. And you wonder, John, did he throw that in, how much he loved him? Because the message that came to him is, Lazarus, whom thou lovest, is sick. That word love's thrown around, and it's like we're needing to know that despite what you see and hear, Jesus really did love them. Sometimes life feels that way, that you just got to remember he does love you, no matter what it looks like around you, or his behavior in the process. And why he says this sickness is not unto death when Lazarus does die. Why does he say he's sleeping when he's really dead? And why even go through all that? Why mention it's not unto death and knowing he's going to die? And Jesus says, and I'm glad for your sakes that I was not there. Basically, he's saying, I'm glad he died. It's no wonder John's reassuring us. He does love him, because now he's saying he's glad he died. But the Old Testament says, precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. Death isn't a bad thing from the eternal side. The best is yet to come kind of thing. And God's always glad to have us home. That's why it's precious in his sight, the death of his saints. Hebrews 11, talking about the Old Testament saints that live by faith, says that many of them suffered persecution that they might obtain a better resurrection. They knew that they pleased God by standing for him, and they knew death would be a benefit to them. Paul said, for me to live is Christ, but to die is gain. Jesus looks at things a lot different than us. Isaiah 55 tells us that God's ways are not our ways. Romans 11 reminds us that who knows the mind of our God, who can bring counsel to him. Jesus is always operating on a different level than we are. Isaiah said, as high as the heavens are above the earth, so are his ways above ours. A great distance ahead of us is the Lord. So don't be confused by all the language. Jesus knows what he's saying and why he's saying it. And ultimately he sums it up in verse 15. I was glad for your sakes that I wasn't there, to the intent you may believe. Nevertheless, let us go unto him. Jesus is always wanting us to believe. And faith is not a prerequisite to get to heaven. Our faith comes because we're going to heaven. And I've kind of reiterated to us, 1 Peter 1 says that we will be kept by the power of God through faith. You and I, if we make it all the way home and prove we're authentic because we made it all the way home, what will get us all the way there is this re-energizing of our faith that God himself will do to keep us going. He promised we will be kept by the power of God through faith. It's these doses of faith through the power of God giving them to us that will keep us going. And how many of us saints out there know exactly what that means? That how many times we would have given up if it wasn't for God somehow re-energizing us. We get weary in well-doing, but somehow we faint not. And it's because God's little blessings of faith, restoring, building up, ministering to us through faith, keeping us going. Jesus said, I'm glad I wasn't there. I'm glad he died, because when you see what's going to happen, it will help you to believe. So this whole story is about faith. So let's read on and we'll get to the word. You remember the key word? Are you paying attention? What is it? No. Very good. You are paying attention. It says in verse 17, then when Jesus came, he found that he had lain in the grave 4 days already. 4 days he's laid there. And verse 18 says, now Bethany was nigh unto Jerusalem, about 15 furlongs off, 2 miles. And many of the Jews came to Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. They're in deep grief over the loss of Lazarus. Then Martha, here we go, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary sat still in the house. Isn't it interesting that every time you find these sisters in the Bible, other than the time when, the time when Mary anoints Jesus, it's still Martha's serving then too, but we remember the story of, Martha coming to the Lord because Mary's just sitting there talking to him and said, Lord, tell my sister to help me, and here we find that personality is still live and kicking. She hears somehow Jesus is on his way, still a little ways away. It's 2 miles from Jerusalem to Bethany. It's kind of implied, but I guess that means Jesus was in Jerusalem, that risky place for him to be at because they want to kill him there, but that's where he's at. And Martha hears in Bethany, which is up on and over the Mount of Olives, she hears that Jesus is coming, so she runs down the hill, the Mount of Olives, to go into Jerusalem to find him. But John tells us, but Mary just sat at the house. Seemed like Martha's always moving and Mary's always staying put. But notice what happens. Then said Martha unto Jesus, so she finally finds him, and she says, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. Now remember that, because it's going to be relevant in a minute what she said. If thou hadst been here, past tense, right? Our brother would not have, past tense, died. Just let that verse hit you for a minute. Do you hear any faith in there? Sure. Her faith was, if Jesus would have showed up while Lazarus was still alive, he could have healed him. That was her faith, but that's her faith. That was the limit of it. It's a great amount of faith. Jesus could have healed Lazarus. He had miracle working power that could have kept him from dying. That's great faith, but that's the end of her faith, that's the limit. It's past tense. If he could have. But now, don't you hear the implication? Past tense, he could have done something, which implies present tense, there's nothing he can do. If thou hadst been here, our brother would not have died. Great faith, but limited faith, right? So let's go on and read, because we're getting to that word, I know. And here it is. She says in verse 21, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. But in verse 22, listen to this question. I even got out from my Bible, I wrote this years ago, the maybe verse. She says, verse 22, but I know, there it is, I see, I perceive, I understand, I have a confident knowledge that even now, meaning she understands what she just said was past tense. If thou hadst been here, our brother had not died, past tense. But she says, but I know, even now, present tense, whatsoever thou wilt ask of God, God will give it thee. Okay, now, what does that mean to you? When I read that, I think she's saying, Lord, I know if you'd have been here 4 days ago, we wouldn't be crying today. We would be having lunch with our brother. But my faith knows that, but I know that even now, right now, we're standing in Jerusalem. I know we still got a couple miles to get to the graveside, but I have confidence. I know, I see in my mind and perceive that even now, whatever you would ask of God, God would give it you. To me, she's saying, my faith's not limited to what you could have done. My faith believes that even today, hope's not lost. Anything's possible. Right? I know, even now. Whatsoever you ask of God, He'll give it you. I know. I know the Lord ruleth o'er everything. When you say I know, do you know? How do you know if you know? Let's read on. Verse 23, Jesus said unto her, she says, I know even now whatsoever you ask of God. He says to her, thy brother shall rise again. Ha! He's coming back to life, Mary. You're right. Even now, whatever I ask will happen. And guess what? I've asked and God has approved it. Lazarus is going to live. Let's see what Martha says back. Martha said unto him, here she is again, I know. She's already said I know once. But now she says, I know again. And listen to how this knowledge sort of contradicts her knowledge she had just a verse ago. It says, I know that he shall rise again. Woo, maybe she does get it. In the resurrection at the last day. Now she's future tense. She believed past tense he could have healed him. Now she believes future tense he will live again. That's her faith. It's there. She has it in Jesus' ability to heal sick people, and her faith is that if you trust God and believe Jesus is the Son of God, someday you will rise again in the last day, meaning the day of judgment. But notice how when Jesus says, thy brother shall rise again, she's not even in the now. But a minute ago she says, I know that even now. But when he says he'll rise again, why does she say, I know he will someday? Did she get hung up on the word thy brother shall rise again? Did she hear shall as future tense? And meaning Jesus was pointing into the future? Was it a casual, you'll see your brother again someday? It didn't even register that he meant maybe today he might rise again. And when Martha says, I know that he will rise again in the last day, Jesus said unto her, I am the resurrection. The resurrection isn't a time, it's a person. I am the resurrection. I'm what brings things back to life. Nothing is ever spiritually alive without Jesus being a part of it. I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Believest thou this? Martha, do you believe me? Do you believe that I am resurrection power? I can bring life to dead things. Do you believe me? Do you? Point blank question. I've heard you say I know twice. I want to know, do you know? Do you believe this? And she said unto him, Yes, Lord, I believe that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world, which is almost verbatim what Peter said when Jesus said, Who do men say that I am? And when he said this, thou art the Son of God, the Christ, the Son of God, Jesus said to him, Flesh and blood hath not revealed this unto you. Right? God had revealed that to him. Martha says the exact same thing. I believe that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, which shall come into the world. Which means if he's the Son of God, he's deity. Deity has power over death. He is a creative power. So when she says, I believe, if this is a movie, do you see her face? Yes, I believe. Jesus says, I'm the resurrection and the life. And though he were dead, yet shall he live. Do you believe this? Yes, I believe you're the Christ, the Son of God. Because watch the movie unfold. And when she so said, she went her way and called Mary, her sister, secretly, saying, The Master is come and calleth for thee. And as soon as she heard that, she rose up quickly, came unto him. Now Jesus was not yet come into the town, but was in the place where Martha met him. The Jews then which were with her in the house and comforted her when they saw Mary, that she rose up hastily and went out, followed her, saying, She goeth to the grave to weep there. And when Mary was come where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet. Stop, look up. Okay, if this is a movie, this is what's happened. Jesus has had this moment with Martha. Do you really believe that I can bring something back to life? And Martha's answer was, yes, I believe thou art the Christ, the Son of God, that should come into the world. You're the promised Messiah. I know that. I believe that. And the next thing we know, she runs quickly, goes all the way up the Mount of Olives, goes to Bethany, finds Mary, and pulls her aside secretly and says to her, The Lord is coming and he's calling for you. He wants you to come to where he is. And Mary leaves with haste, right? Like the shepherds, they went with haste to find the babe in the manger. When you feel this something, for the shepherds, it was this heavenly host saying glory to God in the highest. And they sent the shepherds, and the shepherds went with haste because they had a mandate from heaven to go find this babe wrapped in swaddling clothes lying in a manger. When heaven says go, woo, you gots to go, right? And Mary, it has been met by Martha, who has just been told, do you believe me? He can live. And as you watch this, if I'm watching it in a movie, Martha's told Mary, Jesus is going to bring Lazarus back to life. He told me. I told him I believed he could. But he wants you to come to where he is first. So Mary comes running, and when she finally gets to where he is, and Jesus hasn't moved, testing the old faith, he promises something's going to come back to life, but he don't seem to be in a big hurry to get there, right? He took 2 days before he left over in Perea. Now he's sitting in Jerusalem, not moving a muscle. Martha's already ran all the way to Bethany. Mary's run all the way back. Jesus still sitting in the same chair he was when Martha left. He's in no big hurry. But he's saying, I'm going to bring things back to life. Do you believe me? So when you find Mary running, she comes to where Jesus is, and if you caught it, it says that she, where is it? I'm sorry. It says she fell down at his feet. I mean, the minute she gets there, she just collapses at his feet, and you think she's going to say, what? Well, if it's a good movie, she goes, thank you that you're going to bring our brother back to life. You have no idea how sad I've been and how much my heart is hurt. And I knew you were the answer. Thank you for coming, and thank you for raising our brother back to life. Let's head to the grave, can we? This is what she says. Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. Remember a minute ago I said, remember what Martha says, because it's going to be relevant in a minute. Interestingly, she does repeat what Martha said. It's just not what we thought she might have said. Nothing Martha did with Jesus, that whole exchange of, I know that even now, whatsoever you ask of God, he'll give it thee. And Martha, thy brother shall rise again. I know he will at the last day. And Jesus said, I am the resurrection. Do you believe this? Yes, I believe that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, that should come into all this conversation about do you believe and faith, and Martha saying, I know, I believe. I mean, it's just rolling off her tongue like it's real and solid. But there's this moment that when Mary hits the ground and she opens her mouth, and it's almost like you're on the edge of your seat. What's she going to say? Because it's an exact image of what Martha said to her. Did Martha take her faith to Mary or not? And when she says, if thou hadst been here, my brother would not have died. And it's the same thing Martha said, and it's all past tense, and it has faith, but it has limited faith. Notice, when Jesus therefore saw, verse 33, her weeping, Mary, the Jews also weeping which came with her, he groaned in the spirit. He groaned in the spirit and was troubled. When you study that, Jesus is not in a sad spirit. He's in a indignation spirit. He's moved by frustration, anger, troubled, indignant. Looking at Mary weep and all this grieving, this outward lamenting around her, this wailing. I mean, it's boisterous. It's loud by the words that John chose. It was loud groanings. When Jesus, it says in verse, and he said, where have you laid him? They said unto him, Lord, come and see. And if you're watching this, when it says in verse 35, Jesus wept, you got to follow the bouncing ball if you really want to kind of understand this. Jesus groans in his spirit over seeing Mary and the group weeping. He's troubled, groaning. But he says to them, where have you laid him? And they said, come and see. It's like they lead him to the grave. They're leaving Jerusalem. And the idea is, as they lead him away, Jesus wept. Now, this weeping is an outburst of tears without noise, meaning he doesn't, it's just his insides come external through tears. I've heard a lot of messages. I've read a lot of teaching on why is Jesus weeping. I'll tell you where I land. Obviously, he's not weeping over Lazarus or the grief of Mary and the rest, because he knows he's about to put that to bed. Right? There's no need. You say, Dean, he's moved by their tears. He is moved by their tears, but he's not moved like the human spirit wants to be. I remember growing up as a kid, and Mom would get up and testify, and she would start crying in her testimony, and it made me cry. Not because of what she was saying, just the fact Mama was crying made me cry. It's kind of like laughter's contagious. Sometimes tears are too. I mean, you see it all the time. Was watching Shark Tank not too long ago, and even one of those, sharks, one of the people pitching an idea started crying, and it showed on the panel the sharks tearing up, not because they feel what that person feels, but they're just understanding their sadness. It made them sad. Maybe Jesus cried because of that. That's a good argument. But the one that makes the most sense to me is, and maybe it's just my nature, I don't know, but I think he's sad that they didn't believe him. He's sad that Martha didn't come back and tell Mary, which Jesus knows everything. Shh, don't tell nobody, but that's true. He knew what Martha did and didn't believe. He knew how Mary would come, right? There's nothing he doesn't see and been revealed. But the truth of it is sad. Actually, it's frustrating. It made him angry that this depravity that we've been born with and this lack of faith that we all seem to have, it just makes him sad. It's kind of like when the Bible says, grieve not the Spirit of God. To grieve the Spirit means you choose something other than what he counseled us to do. We rebel against the leading of the Spirit and do it the devil's way. And it just grieves the Spirit that we would do that, because he knows what it's going to cost us and how much we're going to hurt ourselves not doing what we know is right. And it grieves him. I think that's what you see in Jesus is why. Oh, if people would just believe. If they would stop crying. All of my worry is vain. All of my tears are a waste. All of this doubt is just life-taking. Jesus weeps over the idea that if they just believed, they would have such a better existence. That's why he's building our faith, is so we can live, so that we don't go down every other day over what we see, but with our spirit eyes, we perceive and know and see that he is what he says he is, and he can do what he says he can do. That's why Jesus is weeping. To me, is he just wishes people believed, that they believed him and not the devil. It's like a parent whose child gets one bad friend and they start telling them lies and convincing them that the parents are against them. And what's devastating to the parent isn't necessarily the choice, but that somehow they just are choosing a stranger over something that's been so faithful to them. We've changed every diaper. We put food in their mouth their whole lives, and we provided for them dentally and medically, and out of nowhere can come some random person and with a couple lies destroy what you've spent a lifetime making. That's what I think he's feeling. Is what more could I have done? Do you remember when Nathan came to David, what God said to him because he had sinned with Bathsheba and what he had done to Uriah, her husband, and I'm not going to quote it verbatim, but basically when God says the baby's not going to die, but because of the blasphemy that you've caused the enemies of the Lord to have, the baby, you're not going to die, but the baby's going to die. But when God is telling David all that he's done for him, and he said, and if that had not been enough, I would have given you even more. When he says to David, why did you do what you did? He says to them, didn't I do enough for you that you would choose to do what I would want you to do? Have I not proven myself faithful that you can believe in me and choose me over that lust that you felt on that rooftop? Wasn't I bigger than it? That's what makes our spirit grieve. That's what makes our Savior sad, and it makes our God question, have I not done enough for them? Why don't they believe? Why don't they know that I rule over everything and all of their worry is vain? What will it take for them to really know, to see it? Then said the Jews, Behold how he loved him. And some of them said, Could not this man which opened the eyes of the blind have caused even this man should not have died? And listen, at that, the third time somebody said, if you'd have been here, you could have done something, but now you can't do anything. The third time Jesus hears that, maybe you've never caught this before, but notice what it says. Then Jesus, therefore, again, groaning in himself, cometh to the grave. It was a cave, and a stone laid upon it. So the third time Jesus hears somebody say, if he'd have been here, this guy that can open the eyes of the blind, if he'd have been here before he died, he could have done something. At hearing that, Jesus again groans in his spirit. What's going on inside of Jesus is reactions to people's lack of faith. He's not groaning over Lazarus dying. He knows what he's about to do. He's already told his disciples this death is to glorify God. I'm glad he died so you can believe. Jesus knows the point of the whole story. He's not grieving over the stuff me and you would grieve over. He's grieving over the lack of faith in the people around him. That they just don't believe he is who he says he is. And notice, it was a cave and a stone laid upon it. Jesus said, Take away the stone. And here it is, this saddest moment of the day. Martha, the sister of him that was dead, said unto him, Lord, by this time he stinketh. He has been dead 4 days. Jesus says, Take away the stone. And Martha doesn't go, Yes, I'm about to see my brother again. Her first instinct is, Whoa, what are you thinking? You think we want to smell that smell? I would be a lot harder on her if I didn't know me. Many times in the book of Acts when I've read that, in chapter 12 where Herod's killed James and now he's arrested Peter, and the next day they're going to take Peter's life, and there's a prayer meeting at Mary's house, the mother of John Mark, who wrote the Gospel of Mark. It's at her house. The church is gathered having a prayer meeting for Peter, and lo and behold, God gets Peter out of prison miraculously. He comes to Mary's house. He's knocking at the gate. A young damsel named Rhoda comes and for excitement that it's Peter, doesn't even open the gate, but runs inside and tells him, He's here. And they look at her and tell her, you remember, you're mad. You're mad. You're out of your mind, girlfriend. Peter's not outside. He's in jail. Don't you know why we're praying? Peter's going to die in the morning, and we're praying for him, and you're in here interrupting us. What's wrong with you? You've gone mad. They're praying for it. It happens. And they tell the girl she's mad that their prayer was answered. What do you know? No. What do you really know? Because what you really know is what you live. It's borne out. It's proven. It's proven. It's not words. Faith without works is dead. Real faith moves you. It says, let me move the stone. I'm shocked Martha wasn't already at the stone trying to move it herself. Help me, guys. Let's get my brother out of here. Nope. What are you thinking? He's dead. He's been dead 4 days. He stinks. We don't want to. What are you thinking? And notice what Jesus says. Verse 40, Jesus said unto her, Said I not unto thee, that if thou wouldest believe, thou shouldest see the glory of God? What could Jesus say to you, me today? Didn't I tell you? How many times have I said to you? Never mind what I've told you and what I've said to you. How many times have I been faithful to you. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that's in me and I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Where's those people? Where's that Dean? Why does Jesus have to keep coming to me saying, why don't you believe? Why are you worrying again? You just sang Sunday, all of my worry is vain. And that thought comes out of because I know the Lord I know ruleth o'er everything. I know. When we worry, we don't know. When we know, we don't worry. Martha says, I know, I believe, I know, I believe, I know, I believe, blah, blah, blah. Moment comes, stinks. This situation stinks. My life stinks. My brother stinks. Which one really looks like it's the most? Yay! Let's move that stone, or life stinks. It all stinks. Everything stinks. And when he had thus spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was bound with a napkin. Jesus said unto them, loose him and let him go. Jesus has the power. I care not today what tomorrow may bring, if shadow or sunshine or rain. Bottom line, I don't care what circumstances come tomorrow, because here's what I know. The Lord rules over everything. He's in charge. It doesn't matter how much we fear November. The Bible tells me in Romans 13, there's not a king that's ever sat on a throne that God didn't put there. I'm going to go vote. I'm going to pull my lever, and I'm going to cast the vote that my conscience says is right. But at the end of the day, I know my Lord ruleth o'er everything. So I'm not going to get fussy about what the news people say or what bias I hear. I'm just going to trust God. That's how all my worry becomes vain, is because God's in control. God's got the power. He loves you. He loves me. He's made promises. He'll keep them. We can either have faith or go insane. It's up to us. Love you guys.